today we have a few things. We'll start with the XM Cloud learning. So some things I'll share from my side in terms of benefits, numbers, some gotchas, things to watch out for, some things that we learned. And then we'll talk about the CDP experience. So Andreas, we'll talk about the sales story around the CDP, around Sitecore CDP, and then Kautilya will walk us through some of the innovations around OrderCloud. So
finally, the most interesting will be by the end. David Sanfilippo will present integration of OpenAI ChatGPT with XM Cloud. So he has a really working model straight away. It is all in place, and the code is available as well. So stay
integration
tuned.
with ChatGPT with what?
XM Cloud. David, can you step in?
Cool.
Nice. Very cool. Alan, looks like your camera might be covered if you meant to share it. All righty. So let me go ahead and share my screen. That's actually really cool. In terms of ChatGPT, a lot of things are happening around that story. A lot of interesting things. Anyways, so let me go and share the screen. We'll start with the learnings around XM Cloud. Let me know if you guys can see it.
Absolutely well.
Okay. All righty. So, well, we'll start with some benefits. So here's some benefits that we found over the probably over a year now. Yeah, a year and a few months now of working with XM Cloud when it was still in tech preview. So these are the benefits based on our learnings and our findings. So 50% reduction in content authoring time. So this is pretty remarkable. A lot of this has to do with a lot of Sitecore customers still using Content Editor. So when you actually build things right in Pages, by moving to WYSIWYG editor, you can actually realize about a 50% increase decrease in content authoring effort by moving to Experience Editor, but it has its own challenges. So Pages actually comes out to be slightly higher than that, but we just we're saying 50% just to be a little conservative. So if someone's using Content Editor, they're used to using Content Editor. If they move to Pages, that's a massive reduction in content authoring effort. And what we did is we went through the motions of creating landing pages and literally counting the number of clicks, number of steps you got to take to build a website or a landing page, or make certain updates. So that's a pretty significant one. So if you're working with someone who's looking at XM Cloud, that's a big plus. So you have two people updating content, with XM Cloud, it could just be one and the other person could focus on something else. Upgrades. So that one's a no-brainer. You guys probably are aware of that, right? Upgrades are going away for the most part. So, and with upgrades, going anywhere, averaging out 150 to 250, depending on the size, you're probably looking at 70 plus cost savings, right? So that's the benefit that Sitecore is really focused on, along with the hosting costs and maintenance. So the 100% savings on the infrastructure costs, so that is with the assumption that we won't have to use any other appliances to support our solution if we can get away with XM Cloud and Vercel, right? So everything else, so hosting for VMs, databases, search, so all that is going away. Full SaaS. Now, more complex solutions will, of course, have additional things. But actually, I'll touch on those in a little bit here. Backend effort reduction, 50% plus. Actually, it's 50 to 75, I would say. And now with components in the picture to to that point earlier, that's actually going to be more on the higher side. So this is a massive reduction on the back-end development effort. There's a massive reduction that comes from the headless architecture itself, plus with components on top of that. And components are actually a solid tool, especially for the simple components, right? What Martin was talking about. The things that have static content in them, but also if we need to, let's say, short list of certain objects, certain content types, that's an easy one to spin up, right? If it provides a JSON service to us, we can consume that and display it on the page easily. So really, really cool tool. So 50% plus, and 50% it's on the conservative side. So what we found is, again, ballparking it. So usually it's 50 something to 80-ish percentage that we're seeing. 50 something is if you're looking at a relatively complex Sitecore solution implementation. If it's a simple brochure website, you're probably going to save north of 80% on the back end effort through headless, through components. Okay. 23% faster time to market. So that's a statistic that we got from Sitecore. We actually were able to validate it. We're roughly, out of the few XM Cloud implementations, we saw roughly around that number. So we're just sticking with what Sitecore had. So it's around 20% that we saw, but it comes from releasing new features, right? The speed with which we can release features from, let's say, ideation to the final release, right? And again, components is a big part of it. You can spin up a component with components on the fly, right? So just poking around, dragging things around. I mean, there's some flexibility that's coming, that's on the way with the component, but the simple things can be easily done with the tool. And then 15% plus increase in front-end development speed. So this has to do with Next.js framework, right? With using React, Next.js. And finally, front-end developers get to use their tools of choice, right? So instead of being locked into Visual Studio, you're using Visual Code, for instance. You're also working up against APIs. You don't have to have Sitecore set up locally. There are various ways in how we as partners would used to solve these issues with back end and front end handoffs, right? So this got a lot simplified and a lot more streamlined, and so process streamlined. We're working against APIs. There's not a lot of overlap with the back end anymore. The whole presentation, the whole head is in the hands of the front end developer now, and then the frameworks and the tooling, right? So we're actually, it's more than the 15%. Again, 15% is on the conservative side, so it's 15% plus really. So massive savings. So if you're working, let's say if you're a customer considering XM Cloud, watching this recording later, after the webinar, or if you're working with a partner. So these are the things that will be really important in conversations around XM Cloud and really in planning and estimation too. So some non-functional benefits. So this is a real slide from one of the decks that we presented for one of our clients after doing the analysis and doing the work. So their SEO scores have gone up significantly. A lot had to do with speed gain that we had, realized through the move to Vercel, right? So if you haven't had a chance to work with Vercel or static site generation, do look into it. Go through Vercel's documentation. Massive speed improvement. So where our, let's say, target in, I'm going to call it the legacy XP days. Let's say for the HTML markup return was, let's say, 200-300 milliseconds, right? And then we're looking at 2030, right? So it's a 10x improvement on the speed. It doesn't mean that it's going to solve all of our performance problems, and that's an important point, because you still got to, there's still front end concerns and other things that can impact performance, but it's a massive improvement, right, on page load speed in terms of HTML markup return, right? So that's huge. Accessibility. So this was through the rebuild. Scalability. That's an important one. So Vercel has data centers around the world, like multiple regions. Right? In fact, you can code against a certain region. You can allow it to scale. So if we're scaling, if we're allowing it to scale across regions, so now all of a sudden we got redundancy. All right. So we have that SSG performance across multiple regions, and that's significant. That can impact our SLA, not only the performance, right? And that's global. So that's a huge plus for some customers that are global. That's a huge gain. So instead of having to spin up CDs, what we have to do now, right? Vercel kind of, Vercel has data centers around the world already. And I already talked about the SLA, right? So it's just massive SLA improvements. If built right, you might have composable pieces go out of service, right? Let's say if we're operating within the Sitecore stack fully, let's say our search is powered by Sitecore Search, personalization is powered by Personalize and Analytics, CDP, and so forth. Those individual pieces may go out, but that will not impact the website. Of course, search won't work if search is out, right? But the rest of the pages should be loading correctly if built right? And then, in fact, XM Cloud could go out, right? Because we're pulling content from the edge. XM Cloud itself instance could go out, and our website will still remain up. So these are, significant benefits, especially for customers who are global, who appreciate the performance. In fact, I plan to write a blog about this. Static site generation, this increase in speed creates an interesting competitive situation in this space where it's almost like an expectation for websites to just be lightning fast now. So if you're a client watching this recording on the client side, if you're thinking about XM Cloud, this is perhaps one of the most important things to consider is the performance gains you're going to get with Jamstack, with static site generation. Because it's, looking at what we had back in the day, it's almost like, SXA, MVC, it's almost like running with shoelaces tied. You can still get pretty fast with those, but it's, we're talking about milliseconds, right? So in theory, you could cache your whole pages on the CDN, right, with MVC, but then you run into other issues. So anyway, so these are the high level benefits. So I'm going to dive into, let's see, we got 10 minutes. Dive into some learnings. So talk about learnings on the solutioning side. So we can still customize the platform. So we can still deploy custom pipes, processors, right? So we can still do those things. However, we should avoid that as much as possible. So Sitecore hasn't locked down a whole lot there yet, but that goes back to the whole upgrade story, right? So yes, Sitecore is promising legacy support and backwards compatibility and all those things, but there will be major upgrades eventually, right? That will require a change in the code if we're customizing the platform. So try to avoid that as much as you can. That will, of course, reduce the long-term cost of maintenance. When you're evaluating the migration from XP, there will be customizations done for the CM side, for the content offering side, and some customizations would only applicable to the CD. So most likely, those CD customizations are going to have to move to the edge. So while we can keep the CM customizations, again, only if we absolutely have to, the CD customizations would have to go to the edge. So some things, for instance, redirects, aliases, right? Vanity URLs, updating, for instance, capturing a request and manipulating that request in some sort of way, right? Or manipulating a response in some sort of way. So those are the things that we would now do in the middleware in Vercel. So when we plan for those things, make sure to account for those and think through each customizations. And the reason why it's important is because the stuff that's on the CM that we have to keep, that's the stuff you most likely won't have to change. Everything that lived in the CDs that had to do with updating the traffic or customizing how that traffic is treated, it's likely going to have to go to the edge and be rewritten in Next.js. Okay? I think this one is a common sense one these days, but better said than not. Processing, any jobs that we used to have running in the background, they need to be extracted into external apps. And these apps could be on Next.js. These apps could be kept in C#, move them to functions, right? So we don't, I think it's one of the actually later points here. Don't reinvent the wheel with these types of things. If if there's something, let's say in a custom API that lives on CDs or on CM for whatever reason, just keep it in C#. Keep the cost down, move it out into a separate function. With time and with resources down the road, that can always be moved into Next.js if it makes sense. Again, not everything needs to be moved to Next.js. And then once those things are moved out, use webhooks, right, to trigger certain things, or the other way around, right? Use, let's say, logic apps to trigger certain things in Sitecore and XM Cloud and so forth. APIs, so that's along the same lines, extracting. So we do want to extract our APIs from XM Cloud. Remember, XM Cloud is really a CM. So just as you would not call your CM instance from your current solution, you would not want to call your XM Cloud solution, right? So custom APIs, move them out of the solution. This actually introduces an interesting challenge for complex solutions for DevOps, right? So if you're working with a complex solution, you're now splitting all those things out into separate projects, separate solutions. So now all these, moving pieces need to be orchestrated and organized, right? So now you got to figure out how to herd the cats, and that's where the DevOps story becomes pretty complex. Complex but sophisticated and flexible. That gives us flexibility to update certain pieces of the solution without actually having to redeploy the whole monolith, right? So how many times have you been stuck waiting for a simple change to be deployed because the entire solution had to be deployed, right? So that's out the window. Module support. So this is interesting. Module support is limited. Don't assume that the modules that work in XP are going to work in XM Cloud. Yes, XM Cloud is based on 10.3 Sitecore originally. So the bones are the same. But because of that same fact that we can't run processing, we can't have APIs, and then there's some UI also limitations around pages, don't assume that it's just going to work. So validate. So if it's a third-party module, validate with that vendor. A lot of vendors are right now obviously strapping in and updating their modules to work with XM Cloud. So reach out to the vendor if it's a supported module, right? If it's an open source module, look the source code, or break out the decompiler, take a look at what's happening inside of that module, inside of that library. Make sure that what's happening is actually supposed to be happening on XM Cloud or allowed to happen in XM Cloud, because eventually certain things will be blocked. And also build out a proof of concept. Simple proof of concept, test it out, make sure it works. If it needs some tweaks, create a fork, update that source code if it's open source, and put that out for the rest of the community to use. So but don't take that for granted. There's some limitations also on the pages side where we can't have pop-ups just yet, right, on the pages side of the house. So that's a limitation because a lot of modules use pop-ups, right? So that's an interesting one. So that's still being solved for, I think. That that's work in progress as of the last time we checked. Sitecore Connect. So I'm just going to keep shooting this out, right? So I'm just going to cram as many as I can into the next few minutes. Sitecore Connect recipes. Sitecore Connect is there. What's interesting, if you search for Sitecore, it'll come up and it'll show up. And when you click on a product, you actually see recipes aren't published publicly, but there is some stuff that's done, internally at Sitecore. There's lots of things are work in progress. So when you work with Sitecore Connect, when you're integrating with things, reach out to Sitecore and see where if it's not, if the recipe isn't out by that point when you need it, reach out to Sitecore and see if they can share some work in progress on that one. Right? Reach out to partner enablement. If you're a client, reach out to your Sitecore rep, right? Sitecore account executive. So this is an important one. So Sitecore's and Vercel partnership is growing. Sitecore is aligning really closely with Vercel. In fact, multiple platforms are aligning closely with Vercel. So more to come on that. Details, I don't think I can. I don't know if I can share the details. So I'll keep it close. But just for now, just know that partnership is growing, the alignment is growing. So Vercel is really where we want to be with XM Cloud now, from the roadmap perspective. Not to mention that, I mean, there are obvious other reasons, of course, and there's a reason why Sitecore is partnering with them. But outside of that, in terms of roadmap, so this a good nugget of knowledge to keep in mind, because that alignment will just continue growing. One other thing to add to that is there are other static site generator alternatives, right? So there's no limitation. Like we don't on what we can use. We can use, let's say, Azure static web apps, or a different, let's say, hosting provider for static site generation, for instance. But we would have to build out our own way of how to move files over. That's relatively
I think he disconnected.
Yeah, I think we lost Vasiliy. I'll probably intercept and add a couple of things while he is reconnecting to us. Vasiliy fairly mentioned working with API properly, and webhooks is really something that works natively to composable architecture. But XM Cloud comes with a very strong feature built in. It's called Authoring GraphQL API. I'm going to give out a big talk about that next week, or maybe in 2 weeks from now. The idea behind that is very simple. You can manipulate all the content you have within your CM. You can actually manipulate the whole CM, request rebuilding, publishing, lots of other things. And I think it's also a security aspect as well, just through the pooling GraphQL API endpoint. I made a couple of POC about that, and those were quite successful. Moreover, I combined that with webhook, which was even funny. I think the walkthrough I try to do is uploading the media items, and once media item gets updated, it creates webhook, pulling the loads of informational payload about that item and what has been created. So that's pretty good. Okay, Vasiliy is back to us. Give him back.
all righty. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, you won't believe this. I actually have to force myself to step out of the computer. So I have a smart switch, and I set it up to shut off at 5:30 my time. That's what I did. I forgot to turn it off for tonight. So thanks for covering, Martin. So where do we stop on? Okay, so intermediate. Okay, so this goes along the lines of the DevOps story getting more complex. Now imagine that, now if we're starting to think through the architecture and how to move all the custom APIs, let's say all the jobs, all the heavy processing, all those things out of our solution. Let's say we're going to put them into Azure Functions, or some kind of microservice architecture. If we want to scale that. So now this presents a DevOps concern, right? Now you got to know DevOps really well. Now you got to know the cloud infrastructure really well, whether it's AWS or Azure, right? Now you got to know the serverless world, the nuances around performance of the serverless world, the networking nuances, right? And then the security, that's actually the topic that's growing significantly lately, especially with the microservices story. So I actually had a presentation on that at SuckCon in Malaga this year. So if you're curious to learn more about the composable security, check out that video. It's on YouTube. But these are the areas where where previously we didn't have to be exceptionally strong in, because Sitecore solutions were for the most part pretty simple, right? With Sitecore XP, pretty straightforward, as long as we didn't scale the thing, right, fully. But the custom solution around the platform was pretty small, right? That footprint was almost not there. Now it's the other way around. The solution actually lives outside of the platform. So now we got to start thinking about those things. So this knowledge is not only important for the setup, it's also important for estimation. So we can estimate correctly, and then having that skill set implement. right? So there's a lot there that needs to be considered and unpacked, especially if we are dealing with sensitive data. If we have to log down security, there's a lot to consider there. So that's an important one that's going to impact estimates for complex implementations. Now, so we talked about this. Don't reinvent the wheel with Next.js. So you have things in C# and they're working. Keep them in C#. If you can, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? It's going to drive the price up, and there's a lot of thought and effort put into that implementation, right? And it'll allow the customer to just keep driving value out of that. That can be always done with time, right? But some things just don't have to be moved to C#, right? We see originally we saw kind of blanket statement. It was like, oh, everything got to go to Next.js and Vercel. Not really. It's almost like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So Next.js is capable of a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that we have to use it, right? There are benefits, there are drawback, cons and pros to using Next.js for those things. So just be careful about that. We talked about that. So request manipulation, Vercel, and serverless functions. So for the implementation, so several things here. Some important ones. So use a starter project for XM Cloud. If you haven't played around with it, use and abuse. There are some issues with it, especially when you start working on a actual client project. So just be careful. Just like with anything from GitHub, right? Use caution. So, but that's where you want to start. It's important to remember that Sitecore also has another repo for the demo, and if you got access to Sitecore Sandbox, I think the initial instructions were to use that demo, or at least those were the instructions back when we got access to it. The source code for that demo does not follow the Sitecore headless SXA architecture principles, right? So that's important to remember. So use the foundation head, right? Not the demo project. No one's canceled best practices, right? In terms of API coding. So with XM Cloud, that's going to be front and center. So learn GraphQL. GraphQL will be your friend to go to number one. So this is how we get content, right, out of the experience age. So learn how to use GraphQL, learn the query, learn the best practices around GraphQL. Avoid the N+1 issues, right? With just use common sense, basic API performance development practices, right? One of the interesting design principles, we haven't really seen this with Sitecore. You see that in headless CMS space, like Contentful and Content Stack and so forth. An introduction of intermediary caching layer, because those platforms charge by the number of hits, right, to the platform. XM Cloud is the same way. They charge by the number of visits, right? So you can actually mitigate that number by creating an intermediate caching layer for certain things. So not letting requests hit the edge or the platform or whatnot, right? So we can actually reduce that. We've done that similar approach with Content Hub, where Content Hub charges based on monthly business users, MBU, I think that's the metric, by creating a custom portal on top of Content Hub and reducing the number of logins, that authentication that actually had to happen with the platform. So there's some creative ways, for around performance, around architecture. So do research GraphQL beyond just the basics. That's pretty much going to be the API that you work against most of the time. We touched on performance. So SSG is fast, but it's not the solution for speed, not the end be all, right? So it's an important one. It helps expedite the return of the HTML, right? The initial HTML, but there's still many other things we got to worry about. So no one's canceled the performance focused front end development. So do research that, make sure that we're using the best practices in Next.js, front end development, React, best practices around optimization, code optimization, requests. In fact, Vercel can help with a lot of that. Look into the Vercel capabilities. For instance, Vercel can optimize images. It can use the next gen image format automatically. It can generate, let's say, WebP based on our things here, JPEGs, right? So look into all those things and get familiar with the performance focused front end development specifically on Vercel. Pages UI does not allow pop-ups. We talked about that. Do leverage components tool, to Martin's point. Use Vercel for request caching to improve performance. So that's an interesting one. So Vercel, if you haven't played with Vercel, Vercel is not just CDN. Vercel also allows us to run functions, serverless functions on the platform. Vercel is a platform, really. So do use middleware. Do use that to your advantage to improve performance and manipulate requests, cache requests at the Vercel layer. You don't have to, certain things don't have to be passed through. This is an interesting one. So when we first started working with XM Cloud, we're pretty excited about XM Cloud deploying how quickly we can now spin up new environments, which is still awesome, which is still great. However, once we started working developing, we realized that every little change on the front end where we needed to be deployed had to go through that 15-20 minute provisioning time. So there you can build out a custom pipeline and just deploy, let's say, your code custom to Vercel, like trigger the Vercel. But if you're using XM Cloud Deploy, just keep that in mind. And it's not so much an issue. It's if you're used to working, let's say, with JSS, with headless development, you could deploy certain things, immediately, separately, let's say from the backend code, much faster. Here we still got to go with XM Cloud Deploy through that deploying process. But you can build out your custom pipeline. It's it's an extra step, or just simply plan around that timeline, right? Just imagine we're still in the legacy monolith solution days where deployments would take upwards of 20 minutes. Still an improvement. This is an important one. Use Lint for front-end code. I mean, it's a best practice, but do use Lint and follow best practices on front-end development. XM Cloud Deploy will reject your deployment if your code is not formatted well. Okay, so Sitecore did a good job putting some validation in place. Community support is not there just yet. Even on Slack, sometimes not sometimes, but most of the time, it takes a while to get to the bottom where, with XP, the community is there to support. There's probably nothing that we haven't seen already, or the community hasn't seen already about XM XP, right? XM Cloud there's still a lot of unknown. So when you are starting to work on a real project, make sure you have contacts that you can reach out to on the partner enablement side. Make sure you have an assigned partner technical advisor if you're on the partner side, a PTA, to help you through the process. They will help you get through a lot of things. They'll pull the right people. If there's some kind of roadblock or blocker on XM Cloud's side, they'll bring enough light to a problem if there's something up with the platform. So they will help you remove a lot of roadblocks. So that's the last one. So there's plenty of learnings. I wanted to leave some time to see if you guys had any other learnings on top of this. But we're running short, so maybe we'll just open it up for just a couple of minutes. Would anyone want to add anything to this list? After working with XM Cloud, what are some of the interesting things that you've learned that you want to share?
I can add a lot, but that will take a lot of time. So unfortunately, we are time wise. Let me actually share my screen. I show you something. Oh, I cannot share unless you give me permission to.
Aha. Let me do that real quick.
That will be proving your message about C#. Keep going with C# if you still have something working in C#.
Let's see. All right, there you go. Try it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I believe you see my screen. So this is XM Cloud instance, the latest one that is used by Sitecore. And you can see here we have MVP website. That's where all your MVP application go through. And that is actually .NET SXA website was. And what they did, they moved it to .NET Core rendering host, and it works still as it works, but it works headless. And you see, it's very good neighbor to our Sucon websites. You see, there are all Sucon websites. I just built this one, North American. They are built with Next.js. There was no sense for rebuilding the whole MVP website. If it works, well, why would you spend extra effort? Make it work headlessly, use GraphQL, as Vasiliy fairly mentioned, and you get it. That's the whole, I think, series of videos by Rob Erlin about how they build it and how it works. Especially awesome is GitHub Actions that work together with this too and deploys that. One of the things I dropped into a chat about repositories is this one. It's called Awesome Sitecore on my GitHub account, but what it does, it has all the static is available with XM Cloud. The one I was showing is called XM Cloud Introduction, and that's where all the sort code sits. That's probably the most interesting. So if you go here, you will see all the workflows and steps you need to build it all together for .NET, for Next.js. So I leave you that for homework. If you go through and open your eyes, you'll find lots of interesting things there. I promise you.
Excellent.
I think
this is super
I
valuable. Yeah, this is excellent. One last thought I want to leave you guys with is whatever the estimate is for XM Cloud, and I've seen so many. 99% of those estimates can be significantly reduced. Significantly reduced. And a lot of it can be done through just simply applying best practices. So if you're on the client side, I would say challenge your partners to think of ways to reduce the estimate. So when you get an estimate, just ask them, what can we do? What can we do to bring costs down? Because it's, XM Cloud is relatively new. I've seen it myself. Until we rolled out full-scale enablement on XM Cloud, we still had people thinking in the old ways, architects thinking in the traditional way of migrating to XP. This is a bit different scenario. So do challenge your partners if you're on the client side. If you're on the partner side, think creatively, follow the best practices, and just use the architectural principles, use the best practices. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. And then once you start really thinking through things, ask whether we really need to do what you're thinking about doing, right? So do we need to move to C#? Do we need to do this? Do we need to do that? So to really think through and challenge every line item in your estimate to see if, what can be improved and whether it's really needed and required. So I'll leave you with that. So if you got a sticker shock on XM Cloud migration from XP, challenge your partner and challenge yourself if you're an architect.
Vasiliy, everything you said so much resonates with my experience. Like almost I can subscribe under everything. I'll probably drop in one more thing, and that will be all from my side. You mentioned module support, right? You didn't cover a scenario when you are actually an author of this module. And for that case, I suggest you would support your module as a NuGet package, because that comes into source code. So don't invent the wheel. Zip packages are no longer supported in the way as they were supported previously. Don't create init containers, despite you can do that, but like it might be a little bit difficult. NuGet is pretty valid. Reference it, ship it through NuGet, and that it is.
Question from my side. Have you an idea or a comparison between the implementation effort in classic XP and XM Cloud? So in my opinion, the implementation effort should be, let's say, drastically reduced. Isn't that it?
You're talking about, let's say, brand new build? for instance?
Yes, when I start with a new site from the scratch, in my opinion, let's say a typical XP site normally has implementation costs around about let's say 200 to 300 person days in time. Don't talk about money, talk in time. And in my opinion, it should be possible to do a comparable site in nearly half of the time.
I can answer from the real project experience.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right in your estimation. That should be and is less. Even if you don't use all that optimizations Vasiliy was talking about, even if you use the team who is very relatively new to headless development and who just learning it by practice, you will still get less than comparable time if you will be doing that with traditional XP.
Thank you.
But once you get skills, it will be faster, much faster. Once you get, let's say, a couple projects done, you will have the source code you can rely to. You will have specific knowledge. You know how to troubleshoot things. It will be even faster. And again, Sitecore is not standing where they are. They are always bringing and introducing new features. Like components, it was not such a thing even 3 months ago, like it is today. And who knows where it will be in 3 months from now. AI is not sitting there as well. It's development, it's evolving, and it's just a matter of time when it all gets integrated at a full capacity. It's not if, it's when.
Just go to ChatGPT and say, write me React code for a component that does X, Y, Z. It will. But yeah, it's really cool. Something Martin mentioned, new features being rolled out for XM Cloud. That's a real thing. It's almost like driving a Tesla. You start the car and you get a notification. You get new features enabled. Same thing. They roll out updates, especially if you on the partner side or you enable the preview features. So you get the latest features before they go to mass production. So you get things, you just get a pop-up, for instance, single sign-on, multiple IDP support is now available. All right, great. Here's the link to learn more and how to use it. But it's really cool.
I suggest last question, Sarab. You raised your hand, and we go to the next speaker.
Yeah. Just one quick question from my end. When you mentioned about numbers speaking louder, right? So we have mentioned 100% decrease in platform infrastructure hosting cost. So based on your experience, how does it equate, say, a current customer who is an XM or XP, right? Managing their own infrastructure cost plus paying Sitecore license of XM XP. And if they go on XM Cloud, right? So obviously they are saving in terms of platform infrastructure hosting cost. But instead, what they are paying now to Sitecore for the entire SaaS model of XM Cloud, how does it equate? Any numbers or any calculation you could share?
Well, it's so it used to be that XM Cloud was pretty up there. Pricing has changed and evolved over time. I can't really get into the details. It's always best to reach out to Sitecore because they have all kinds of promotions that they sometimes run internally on their side, and they can work out all different kinds of deals depending on where you are and quarter in the year, and so it's deals that are rolled out as like sales promotions, right?
Yeah.
So especially for existing XP customers, right? So it's hard to tell, depending on what the license cost. So it's one thing I can't tell you is the higher your traffic numbers, the lower or the closer the cost is going to be to your original license to XP. So the XM Cloud charges per visit. One of the biggest metrics for XM Cloud pricing is the number of visits a year, right? And the higher that number of visits, the lower the cost is per visit. You can think about it that way.
Maybe I can add something here. I had the talk with a product manager from Sitecore because of the pricings and stuff like this. Because so in my role, most of the time I do pre-sales and stuff, and it's always hard to talk to customers when you don't know what numbers you're talking about. And so let's say a rough estimation is the smallest package for XM Cloud is 2 million visits and 5 concurrent backend users. So these are the two matrices which are interesting. And the smallest package costs, let's say, around about 30K per year.
Pricing is different per region, Andreas. So
Yeah.
whatever is equal to Germany is not equal to states. Without disclosing the actual numbers, what I can say, you really start saving with XM Cloud as much as you go. So the more sites you do, the more you save.
Yeah.
I can say I've seen price tags around that in the Americas as well.
And nevertheless, the savings of the updates are, in my opinion, the biggest reduce of costs for a long-term goal, because an update, so we have customers with really complex sites. An update costs up to let's say around about 100K only for an update, and when you get rid of stuff like this, it's very fine.
Oh yeah.
See, the game changer starts when you get to the heavy traffic websites. That's where you actually go for real saving.
Exactly. In fact, there's we have an ROI calculator for those things, and whenever when you get into the license costs and so the cost of migration, sometimes it can be a price sticker shock. But if you actually start breaking down all the savings, even just without the fluff around, well, we could use this for something else, just the bottom line, pragmatic, hard look at what you're going to save by moving to XM Cloud, not even without hypothetical scenarios of, well, conversion rate improvement because the performance gains. Outside of all that, just the bottom pragmatic look, we're seeing a break-even point in the second year. So that's even with the cost implementation. So, and that's with the implementation being at least half of the first year, right? So you're really looking about a year runway after that where you're breaking even, and then from there on you're gaining.
I calculated on something slightly advanced than brochure website, and that's you get the go-to savings on the third year. The one thing is you get the estimate for XM Cloud from Sitecore, right? But you must understand that lots of things included already in that. So you don't pay for Experience Edge because it's included, and that's expensive product on its own. You do not need to carry on your content delivery service. It's coming back to the point I said, where you start saving. The more heavy traffic you get, the more you save, because that's a bottleneck of classical XP infrastructure, where you have to scale your CD server. Regardless how much do you cache, that's your bottleneck. With headless and with Next.js, scalability comes totally outside of Sitecore. Sitecore is just your CM. It published to Edge, which is already a geographically scaled CDN with your content, your Vercel or whichever provider, Netlify, it's also globally distributed. So the scale of, like, there's no that bottleneck. That your Vercel becomes your point of scalability, and that's where you actually save.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
All righty. Well, let's go ahead and move on. We're running behind schedule. Andreas, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay, that's great. So let's start. Yeah, I want to talk about Sitecore CDP, a sales use case, and yeah, what we learned during the implementation. So this is not on, let's say, development stuff. It's more about pre-sales and how to handle customers. So yeah, I want to show a bit about the environment of the customer, the requirements, the problem, how we have solved it, the solution, the method, and what's happened at least. So let's talk about the environment. The environment is a long-term customer of us. It's Blickle. They are creating casters and roles. It's an owner-managed company founded 1953, a world leader in casters and wheels with around about 1,300 employees and a revenue of let's round about 300 million per year. So it's a mid-sized company. It fits to Sitecore, so let's say the bottom line a bit, but they are on Sitecore for several years, I think, since Sitecore 7.2. So the challenge of the business, why we use Sitecore, they have a, let's say, really complex business. They have, first of all, decentrally stored customer data. That's not critical for the DXP. No system with a data sovereignty. And what is a really big problem is they have a complex sales process. They doing much of the sales process in persons. They have their salesman on the street and selling stuff, driving to the customers, and yeah, it's hard to handle all the data. Next thing, they have around about 25,000 products, and that's a really heavy load or a big bunch of products. And they have a really broad customer landscape from craftsmen, small customers, up to enterprise corporate customers, with own interfaces in the shop. They ordering via interfaces their stuff, and really complex conditions with discounts and graduated prices and stuff like this. So it was really hard to handle this in the shop, and a website with 34 language versions and countries. So this is something to keep in mind for the next slides. Yeah, the requirement, it was pretty easy. They talked to us and said, okay, we're ready. We want to start with personalization. So we told them, yeah, okay. We checked some things, and we had a look on the system. At this time, they had Sitecore XP 9.2. The update was planned so far. They have a shop implementation. In this case, it was e-commerce. The ERP system, CRM system, both was SAP, and product management system, the In-River. So this was not everything. These were the systems which all have touch points to the DXP, but there are additional systems with customer informations. It was the SAP in general, the CRM, but also a parts management tool called Trace Parts or Candenas, the user-like chat, and a lead management tool, MyStand Leads is it called. I didn't know it before, and Wiremind's Lead Lab. So there were all stored customer data in it. So the challenge, we have a newslettering tool. It was a third-party tool, the website, the ERP, the CRM, and then a big cloud of additional tools. So the next thing, it was a really, let's say, hierarchical, organized company. So there were many silos of the data. So the the people don't want to share data. It's a mentality thing of the company. So it was pretty hard to bring them on one table and talk together. So give the data to the marketing, for example. So these were the challenges. Goals were to get ready for personalization, improving the conversion rates of the shop, and cracking the data silos, and have a centralization of customer data, and also connecting all touch points, also the physical touch points they have. Yeah, problem. We had a look at a license, what they have licensed. This leads to the problem. They have a Sitecore XP, but in the XP license, no XDB was included and no EXM included. So the next step was to talk to our partner manager, give me the price for the upgrade of the license. And I think you know the answer. The license price for XDB additional and the EXM was far more expensive than CDP and personalize. So this was how we come to the CDP. This was the solution we provided to our customer. Introduce Sitecore CDP. So instead of an update from Sitecore XP to 10.2 at this time, we installed Sitecore and moved to Sitecore XM 10.2. We replaced the existing newslettering tool with Sitecore Send, and we start introducing the CDP. With the goal of the centralization of the customer data, introducing the segmentation, and introduction of the physical touch points in the CDP. After the implementation of the CDP, we had in mind to collect data, and after that, introducing the personalize from Sitecore. Yeah, the method we had a kickoff meeting, clarification of terms. This is pretty much important to talk, to have the same wordings in mind. Clarification of the procedures and goals, how to go forward. After that, we had expert interviews with the different departments of the company. We had an inventory data. We had an agreement of the touch points, so that we all talked about the same touch points, and we querying all departments where they have the biggest, let's say, pain points to manage and handle the data. Yeah, so far it's looked pretty well, and after that we had some workshops. We had reflection and commitment on the customer life cycle and touch points, and we outlined the first use cases. After that, we had a small analysis and process tracking concept, and in parallel the use case elaboration. And after that, we started to implement the CDP tracking. So, but there the first problem popped up. The processes in the company weren't ready for such thing like a CDP. So we had to deal with the processes. So we had to do consulting job to adjust the processes between the different departments to clarify the understanding of what are the goals. And this leads to some workshops during the setup and implementation phase of the CDP implementation. So far, they're good. What you see here is was the plan how to go forward after the setup and the analysis workshop, adjust the output and do the adjustments of the CDP and the improvements after we dealt successfully with the process optimizations between the departments, and last but not least, doing continuous optimization. This was the goal at least. So this leads to yeah, I think I jump over this part. It's pretty much nearly the same as before, but in a bit more words to understand. And we try to build something like this what also is from Sitecore offered, the best how to deal with the implementation of the CDP. This works mostly very well, but then starts the customer. The happening, what I called. The customer told us, how can we track XY with the CDP? Yeah, the answer was CDP is not Google Analytics. So CDP is not in charge for tracking. It's in charge for data. So this was, in my opinion, a first misunderstanding of what a CDP is and what not. The second thing, we want to see XY overview of the tracked data in CDP. Keep in mind, CDP has nearly no dashboarding and not the capability of individual views or dashboards. There are solutions to deal with these things. Maybe I can tell something about it. What is possible is to export the CDP data on a AWS data lake. You got a Parquet file from that, and you can now build on top with Microsoft's tools dashboardings. So with Power BI, that was how we solved it for the customer. So yeah, in my opinion, it's a bit complicated to go this way. So the dashboarding is really a hard thing to deal. There are tools outside from third-party vendors, formerly Sitecore architects. It's called Reflection. They provide dashboardings for XP and also the CDP, but the costs are really, let's say, a bit high. That's how we dealt with this case, but you have to keep in mind. And the next thing is, you said it's composable. So let's start with CDP. And when the system is live and running, we go ahead with personalize. I cannot recommend to do it this way. You can use CDP without personalize, but if you have in mind to use personalize, then do it in parallel. So keep it as a bundle, like it's mentioned from Sitecore. First of all, CDP without personalize makes not that much sense. So personalize has some let's say, more dashboards, and what will you do with the segments of the CDP if you don't use, let's say, any tool to provide personalization of the website? And you can implement CDP first without personalization. Yes, this works, but this leads to additional costs, not only regarding the license, also for the implementation. So if you implement personalize after a CDP, you have to do really many adjustments on the website. So don't do this. And the most important thing is take care of customer expectations and take care of a common understanding what is a CDP and what is not. In my opinion, nearly no customer has a complete picture of what a CDP really is and for which things a CDP is capable and for what not. So there are really much misunderstandings. So also between the lines from Sitecore, they like to tell you something about it's completely GDPR conform if you use CDP because first party data and stuff like this, but you need a tracking tool which also is first party. So if you not use the Sitecore tracking capabilities, you run pretty much in trouble to have all in first party. So, and this was pretty much the learnings from our side, which we run in. So please don't do this the same stuff, and try to keep in mind what a CDP is and what not. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have you
Andreas.
questions?
Yes, I do have one. So you mentioned there's no dashboarding capabilities. So you had to export data and build an app on
Yes.
top of it. How cumbersome was that project, exporting and building that Power BI app?
Sorry,
Was it
how
easy?
what?
How easy was it? Was it easy or took a lot of time? Like how many hours did you spend on building that?
For the most expensive part in time were to figure out a way how to deal with this. So if you know the way, so you need an AWS export. So you need the AWS data lake, a small amount for the CDP data. If you have the par key file, you can read the data and put Power BI on top of it. For the first, I think 5 or 6 dashboards they want to see. We need, I think, around about 2 weeks.
Okay. Thanks.
Any
You're welcome.
any limitations during the export that you guys run into?
No, it depends on how many data you have. It takes some time, so you are not in real time. What you have to keep in mind. So normally we have an export once a day, or we make an active push by hand to push the data into the file. I talked to the product managers of Sitecore, so they will add dashboarding or a bit more dashboarding than there is right now, but not with individual configurable dashboards. And this was what the customer wants.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I think one of the interesting things about personalize is I talked to the product team at the last year's symposium is the web, the digital channel isn't really the only place where it can apply. It can be applied in many ways internally. So if there is a challenge, if you're considering, you know, to purchase personal, if there is a challenge with the cost, for instance, talk to your partner, talk to Sitecore, and you know about the other ways that it can be used in for internal decision management. So it's a real-time decision management tool, first and foremost. We're using it for the web, but it can be used in so many different ways, from customer service to internal business decisions to other things. So very, very cool feature. All right. Any other questions for Andreas? All righty. Well, thank you, Andreas. This pretty insightful. So the CDP is an interesting one. I haven't actually seen a CDP deployed without personalized. Has anyone seen that? I'm just curious. Yeah, that's what we're seeing as well. So it's good learnings. Thank you. So thank you for the presentation again. Thank you for staying late. It's amazing you were able to do it so late in your time. So
it was a pleasure. Thank you.
And at this point, Kautilya will move over to OrderCloud.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, share screen. And let me move this out. Okay, yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about OrderCloud. Okay, yes. So most of you are aware of what is Sitecore Commerce, and I will take a minute to explain what's OrderCloud. OrderCloud is a B2B, B2X e-commerce development platform which allows you to do OMS, actually OMS like order management system as well. So you have the ability to accept orders, right from add to cart to submit the order, and then you can actually use it as an OMS as well to make changes on the order, whether it's shipped, not shipped, how many items are going to which warehouse, internal tracking kind of stuff, or refunds. And then it is also a marketplace integration platform. It's all SaaS based. With Sitecore Commerce, you had the ability to host it on-prem or on Azure, but this is purely SaaS. And there are a lot of advantages of that, which I'll explain later. But OrderCloud is the modern SaaS-based e-commerce platform, which is basically a next-gen, I would say next generation kind of cloud-native Mac, designed with Mac architecture. And one thing I want to call out here is very developer-friendly. The ramp-up required for like a traditional commerce system was typically more as compared to OrderCloud. So you could easily get started within a day, and you don't need to install your engine or install a lot of databases. Pretty much you can get started day one as a developer. Okay, so the platform team has actually been very active, and they have been gauging where the market trends are going, what are the market trends, and constantly updating the framework, like the platform itself. So I'll talk about each of these next, but you can see in the last 6 months, these many new features were added to the platform. And I'm very impressed with the product team, but the way they are positioning this and where they are taking the next steps is pretty commendable. So they do have a new one which got I think announced day before yesterday, which I don't have it here, which is called Customer Loyalty Program, which I'll cover maybe in the next session. But recently they added Customer Loyalty Program as well. Okay, moving on. So the number one is tracking events. So think about a scenario here. Like, let's say you're an influencer. You have a dedicated URL that someone clicks and takes you to a PDP, a product page on a storefront. And you need to know, like, did the person land on the page or did he complete the order? When will I get my commission? It's kind of tracking kind of scenarios. So OrderCloud team invented, they added these new feature called tracking events, where you can send information of real-time information of what's happening with certain events. And it can go to an individual, it can go to a queue, it can go to a HTTP endpoint, and the person will be notified actually. So this is really important for complete 360 view of what customer is doing as well. You have Google Analytics too, but that's not what this is intended for. Let's say sometimes orders are generated without Google Analytics, like without a front end, like subscription. You need the ability to inform someone that, hey, this order was created, this is your subscription, this is the new order. So tracking events can be used there easily. Similarly, if you want to know, if I'm an influencer, I sent something to a prospect, I need to know whether he clicked the link, he added products to cart or not. That can be done easily using tracking events. And as a matter of fact, this exact requirement I had to build with a traditional commerce platform. It was custom. So we get this out of the box with Sitecore OrderCloud. And by default, you can send these events to Discover and Send. They are like out of the box capability to send all these events there. Okay, moving on to the next one. So we saw that they are tracking events, but how do we configure where does it go? Who receives the events? Traditionally, in e-commerce, like not a modern system like a traditional system, you'll be adding config files, coding for it. If this happens, send this here. There's the config, read it. Delivery configurations are all SaaS-based configurations. So let's say you created a order completed event, and you want to say, okay, when its order completed event is raised, go to a HTTP endpoint. So you create the event, and then you assign a delivery configuration to it to go to endpoint. Or you can say, okay, go to Kafka, then go to Event Hub, then go to HTTP endpoint. So multiple people can be notified of the same event, and the same model can be posted to each of the instances here. So it's pretty handy. You don't have to check in any code or any config. It's on the fly. If you have the ability to add new events and their configuration, where does it go? Okay, so child products. Let's see let me see if I can move it. Okay, let's move it here. Okay, so let's say you have a requirement that you need a bundle. Basically, this is a bundle. These are the products inside it, but the bundle itself cannot be sold without any products. So this is a perfect use case of child products. You create a parent 9-day cleaning system and then add products to it, which are child items. So nobody can buy this product. This product by itself is not purchasable. But when you select something and add to cart, the price is calculated for you based on the visibility and price cards. And you get the final price based on what you select. So this is an easy way of doing it. You can also do it using variants, which is more complicated. So this is a new feature which recently got added. I could see use cases of this just as a product family kind of thing. You have a family of products that has some products in it, and you just need someone to select and add to cart. So it's mostly for a view, and the products added to cart are in the end, these products are added to cart, not this. So there's a concept of assignments and visibility in OrderCloud, which tells you, like, as a buyer, am I allowed to see this product? If I'm allowed to see this product, what's the price? So all those are honored here. So if I have this product only for certain individuals, they will see it. Others won't see it. So that's the beauty. Like, all the assignments rules are maintained, but you can also override it with the parent. Like, hey, parent is the one that is driving it, and all these inherit from the parent. This is pretty handy as a like in traditional commerce, we used to have dynamic bundles kind of stuff. So it's pretty much related to that. Okay, moving on. Subscription, my favorite one. So subscription offers guaranteed revenue forecast in like inventory, and helps the business take key decisions like where and how they should position their warehouse. So the product team actually added this a couple of months ago. And let me give you an example. I had to build the subscription framework from scratch for a client on a traditional commerce, which took almost like 3 to 4 months. And this is available for us out of the box. So pretty much with subscription, you need the ability to create a subscription. Basically, when you're checking out, you select which items you need as subscription, and then you extract those and store it as separate entities. So with OrderCloud, you get that entity out of the box. Hey, these are the products in my subscription with the quantity. And then there is an hourly job that triggers and checks which subscriptions are due for an order within the hour. And so it basically extracts those subscription posts. It's on an endpoint, which you are hosting for your regular checkout submission, and those subscriptions are created. Now combine this with tracking events where you can actually send notifications to all the customers that, hey, we successfully created your subscription. So that's one portion of it. Now the next portion is basically once you have the subscription created, you need the ability to manage your subscription, change my date, change my frequency, change my products, remove products, add products. So those APIs are also available out of the box. So this is pretty handy when someone is looking for subscription enablement on their existing website. This can be used as a standalone entity. You don't have to use the checkout. You can actually use just the subscription portion of the OrderCloud, which is a separate entity, and it maintains the subscription. Once the time comes to create the order, it will extract the subscription and post all the products and quantity, everything to an endpoint of your system where you can create the actual order. Okay, next one. So product collections. Product collections have been around for a long time, and some new features have been added to it. Think of product collection as a basket or a collection. It's a wish list kind of thing, where you can put products and see later what do you want to move to your basket. You can also use it for save for later kind of implementations. So with this new feature, they added a property on the collection where you can control whether it's private or shared. You can keep it private for some time, and then you can invite someone to your collection. That's via this product invitation APIs. So you add all the products you want, and you can invite someone to collaborate on it. The other one is basically you create a shared product collection, which is shared from get-go. Anyone in your organization can look it up and start viewing it or editing it. So these are the two new features with the product collection. Promotions, enhancements have been added. So two new, basically auto apply is a new property on the promotion, which means that you could have promotions sitting in the system which are not automatically applied. But if the user wants to see, hey, am I eligible for any promotions, you can present them with certain number of promotions. And similarly, there's a priority, like if they're conflicting qualifications on a promotion, there's a priority set right now, like, okay, if there's a conflict, the priority is this promotion over that. It's a numeric field. The higher the number, the lesser the number. So promotion priority with 1 will be taken if there's a conflict with priority number 2. And the next property they added on a promotion is called inactive promotion. I think it's called disabled true or false, but then you have the ability to archive a promotion. You don't have to delete a promotion, because when you delete a promotion, it has to remove from all your orders and existing carts. But then this being an OMS, you have to maintain history of which promotion was used in which order. So that's why a new property is added to basically keep a promotion as disabled. So it won't be removed from historical orders, but it won't be available for new orders. So this is important for audit trail. New endpoints were added. One is for eligible promotion. So it will, like we talked about, like I click on a button, or you can auto display to user, hey, you have this item in your cart, you qualify for this promotion. So that is what this is used for. And then this is the one when you apply a promotion. Basically, when you apply a promotion, it will actually get all the eligible promotions. Auto apply is true, this property is true, sort by the property, and then apply one by one to whatever you're eligible. So right before this, you had to write custom and logic to get the eligible promotions and apply. And all the promotions were auto apply unless you add a coupon code to it. Okay, so this one is important for maintenance. Like typically when you go live, you are okay, you don't need to rebuild index because everything is, you're not changing a lot. But over the course of a project, you'll add new fields to the schema, OrderCloud schema. You need the ability to run an index on demand. It was not available earlier. You could not run it on demand. You had to coordinate with a lot of folks to run it on demand and on a schedule. So this is a new feature in the actual OrderCloud portal. You can log in. The administrators, only the marketplace administrators have access to the search tools where they can trigger an index rebuild. One of the reasons why Sitecore OrderCloud is fast, performs really well, is because it reads a lot of data from the index and caches it. So whenever you rebuild this index, that cache will be busted and a new index is created. So it does follow the design of rebuild on a separate index and then switch. So your website is not impacted, but your cache does get bust when a new index is created and swapped. In the lower environments, like the sandbox environment, you can rebuild more often, more frequently, like 10 rebuilds per hour, which is okay because you're doing a development. In actual like sandbox, live or staging, you will get only 3 rebuilds per hour, which is understandable because you don't want to rebuild continuously. And I think 10 rebuilds per week. So we have to be like real careful on production to use it only when we need it. And because there are limitations how much you can use it. Okay, product synchronization. One of the use case is OrderCloud is your master catalog. And once you accept an order, it goes to a ERP to actually fulfill it. The ERP needs to know if that product, whatever the data they have in their system, is actually the latest. No new attributes have been added that they have to basically like change something in their system. So with this product synchronization APIs, you can actually push data out. Whenever a product is created, updated, deleted, you can send information to all these endpoints. And with this, you can also actually send information to Discover where your index is in sync, because Discover has its own API for incremental indexing of products. So this is really helpful when you have a scenario you have to keep in sync your product catalog with multiple systems. Your external systems actually don't have to pull data. They will get a push from the OrderCloud system to whenever the catalog changes. Let me see. I think that's all I have for the product updates. Now I want to quickly talk about like OrderCloud is a SaaS-based platform. What are the benefits and how does it all tie up in business innovation? So one of the benefits is you don't have to manually sync data, catalog or order or anything down from production to lower environments manually. It is automatically on a schedule. So you don't need to have resources to actually look into a CI/CD pipeline that's doing this. With SaaS, you have the option to automate a lot of monotonous tasks. So this is one of that. And also, you don't need to do a lot of backups on your own. The platform itself is taking itself backups automatically based on some rules. Next is scalability and reliability. Whenever there's a increase in traffic or there's a spike, the system guarantees a performance. So it automatically adds resources in the backend and guarantees that it's reliable and SLAs are met. Same thing with disaster with OrderCloud or any SaaS-based system. They can have internal monitoring tools where they are constantly monitoring their services, that everything's up and running. If, let's say, they cannot reach to database, they'll automatically fill over to another group, and it will be seamless for the end user. So again, there are savings here. You don't need a team to monitor your website or the commerce instance. It will automatically take care of that. Same goes for upgrades like we talked about, like XM Cloud. Upgrades on SaaS platform are automatically performed by the product team, and you automatically get to the latest version of the product. Combine all these four and the savings, like you don't need a team for DevOps, you don't need a team to monitor your database or website or spike in traffic. You don't need someone to actually do the upgrades over maybe 2-3 years. All of these will actually help you increase your budget for actual implementation. You as a business need to focus on innovation, how you can improve your customer experience. You don't have to worry about the mundane tasks like DevOps or someone monitoring my website, upgrades, how do we do that? So all of these tie into your focus. The business has all the time to focus on where they need to. So that's how it all ties up. And I think that's it from my side. Any questions? I know I had to rush a bit because we're a little over, but any questions?
Love your template. For those who are on the XM or on Experience Commerce right now, what would you say are the top 3 benefits? Wow.
Top 3 benefits. So number 1 would be, like I said, upgrades. Number 1, you don't have to worry about upgrading your system every 6 months or a year. It will be automatically taken care once you move to OrderCloud. Now, the second one I would say is onboarding, like ramp up time of a developer to come on the project and actually start delivering is, I would say, 90% less with OrderCloud. With Sitecore Commerce, you have to install the engine. You have to make sure your data is synced. You have a lot of things. And by the time a developer is actually productive, you will lose actually a week, maybe a week, depending how complex the project. If it's simple, it's maybe 2 days. But the developer ramp up with OrderCloud is pretty much point to endpoints and then sync a repo. You don't have to worry about setting up a database or something that is very custom. So everything is streamlined there. So if you have a Docker, you load the image, and you're ready. You're pointing to a staging, environment of OrderCloud, and you're ready to contribute. And not just that, all the APIs, all the entities in OrderCloud are like self-explanatory, I would say. Like, you don't need a lot of time to understand how the engine works. All the APIs, the portal tells you everything. The documentation tells you everything. There's no actually ramp up on learning the platform as well. Like very minimal, maybe a day or 2, you'll get going. And the third one I would say is also like mostly on the maintenance side. When a project is running up and running, you also have to maintain your lower environments. In commerce, especially, your catalog has to be synced, your promotions has to be synced. Everything takes a little bit of time away from your key resources. With this, it's all automated. You don't have to worry about maintaining a team who does that every sprint or on a cadence, So these are savings, real savings that will over a period of year or two will actually be very beneficial.
Yeah, there's definitely it's night and day for those
Mhm.
who worked with experienced commerce. Oh boy, it looks like we got a question. Danielle, go ahead.
If we want to migrate or move from the experience commerce to the order cloud, what would be the approach?
Right. So it really, I would say, it depends how much you want to invest. Basically, you cannot either you can do just one-to-one, just take your catalog as is, put it in OrderCloud, or you can take this opportunity to actually re-architecture your catalog. Is there a way you can optimize and use the best features of OrderCloud? Because you can take as is, put it in OrderCloud. It will work, but if you're willing to invest a little bit more, you can re-architect your catalog, re-architect your inventory, re-architect how your systems work. And that will reap benefits over the years. Like, for example, there was a customer who had like 108 catalogs, and we put them on OrderCloud with just one catalog, and their operational efficiency increased by like 90%. It's just basically how much you want to invest. The main question is basically, do you want to keep migrate as is, or do you want to take this opportunity to improve your business operations as well? So it really depends on the customer needs.
Okay.
Andreas, looks like you got another question.
Yes, I hadn't that much touch points with OrderCloud. Can you tell me what do you think? What is the unique selling point of OrderCloud? Because there is so many, in my opinion, good commerce tools out there, like Spriker and what else? The names of all these systems. But when to go for OrderCloud?
When to go for an OrderCloud? So you can classify a client which is already on the Sitecore platform and they're using Sitecore Commerce Engine. It makes sense, like naturally, to use OrderCloud if they want to upgrade. Someone who is not using Sitecore platform, we have had a customer who came to us, hey, I want to go live in 3 months, and I don't have the basically time to go traditional, build my infrastructure, and can you guys help me? So we were able to launch OrderCloud with headless, with the Next.js app and our OrderCloud instance in 3 months, because it was really simple educational website. They were selling courses and all. So in like basically, if you see time to market here, it's like really fast. I don't see. So we were actually, when that customer came to us, we had to evaluate which platform would be the best. This was the most cost optimized platform, given we don't have to create any infrastructure. All we have to do is create a head and a middleware. So there's opportunity here to like actually go to market faster than other traditional commerce, other modern commerce as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Very cool. Any other questions for Kautilya? He's a commerce wizard, by the way. So anything related to commerce, he'll be able to answer. This is your chance.
All right. If there are none, so I'm going back to my LinkedIn is here. I'm going to paste it in the chat as well. Do reach out to me. Let me know. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Vasiliy.
Thanks, Kautilya. This is great. OrderCloud is probably one of the most, it is the most flexible commerce platform I've ever had a chance to work with.
Time to market.
Oh, yep. So, so on that note, just a couple announcements, reminders. We got SuckCon North America right on the horizon. Martin, anything you can share with us on that front?
Not much I can share straight away. I can tell you that organization committee is now working on the papers, and we aim to pass the first line of submissions within the week until the next Tuesday, ending up with the second line of submissions by the following Friday. And I really hope that I will make announcement by following Monday. So it's not next Monday, but Monday after week. It's not official. Please don't take that as the date. It's only provisional date. But the idea is that early bird ticket is working until 31st of August. So we definitely want to make the announcement as early as possible so that some of you who've been chosen can get your free ticket to the event. Some of you who are not unfortunately chosen can still benefit from early bird. And of course, I know we are all busy people. We all work somewhere. We need to act on planning. So the idea is to get it done maybe like a week before the end of month, maybe even 10 days before month. We are doing our best. My biggest regret is that we do not have enough capacity to fit all the applicants. I was amazed by number of awesome tracks you guys submitted. I know many people on the call submitted these papers. I was reviewing them, and like especially on the technology track, that was really awesome. So there will be 4 tracks for the first day and 2 tracks for the second day. The tracks are named as MVP categories, similar to we have technology track, we have strategy track, and no, we don't have ambassador track, we have a marketing track. And the 4th track is something that, like you see, we will have some application that we cannot fit into the first 4 tracks, but we definitely 3 tracks, but we definitely want them to be as a part of the conference. So we will fit them as a mix into the mixed track, and hopefully it will get there. So that's it. The website for SuCon event, I think I'll publish it just in a couple of days, definitely somewhere on this week. So some curious of you may probably find it by guessing the URL to it. Stay tuned, guys. Looking forward to meet you all there in Minneapolis, 5th and 6th of October, regardless of if you will be chosen or even not. Just come on, let's go together. It will be an awesome event.
I have to say thank you, probably from the entire community, if I may. I mean, Martin, you and the team, you guys have pulled through the North American event. So that was awesome. Thank you for doing that. Thanks for pushing it through. I think
yeah, the background to it was both me and you were at last year's SuCon in Europe. I was so excited, so inspired by how it went there in Budapest that I raised the call, found all the people who were on the same wave as I am, who really wanted to have such an event here in the United States or Canada, because Canada is still North America. And I hope we make it work and we make it annual practice. So with that in mind, let me introduce the next speaker. Next speaker is David Sanfilippo, Sitecore MVP. He works for Perficient as Principal Director of Sitecore Practice. Well, in fact, David Sanfilippo is my direct boss. So let me introduce David Sanfilippo and his wonderful findings about integrating AI, OpenAI, and ChatGPT into XM Cloud interface. David, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mark. I know we're running late on time. Should I try to bridge or go fast, or should I just give you the full flavor?
Take your time, David. Take your time.
Cool. So thanks everybody for joining. As Martin said, I am David Sanfilippo. I'm the principal from our Perficient Sitecore practice. I do have 7 children. You may not be able to see all of them. The best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. I barely check Twitter or X, whatever you call it then. So as a principal, I lead us from like a sales and marketing perspective. I'm very passionate on a lot of the new SaaS products. I'm very passionate on XM Cloud. We'll talk about that, but I'm also spending a lot of time actually in Sitecore Personalized and CDP. So all the stuff you covered earlier definitely resonates. And we're just starting to figure out and build out some of our OrderCloud capability, but we're definitely that's a work in progress. But today, I'd like to talk to you about generative AI and specifically around the ChatGPT, Azure OpenAI. Actually, even before we get into that, I have a demo. I'll actually go into the code. I'll show it to you, and hopefully nothing breaks. Hopefully the demo gods are good. But I did want to start by kind of giving a little background because I think this is an evolving space. I think what is today is going to change 3 months and 6 months and 9 months from now, but it's very exciting and it really is going to impact our content authors. And actually, if you think about it, ChatGPT hasn't been around a year, right? I think it came out in November 2022. And I remember when I first logged in and looked at it, just seeing how it would just respond and type out the answers, and it's like amazing, and you know it's gonna change how things work. And it's gonna get better and better. And I'm using it, like I produce a lot of content, I write a lot of blog posts. I don't use it to write an entire blog post, but I use it to kind of go back and forth and think through things and conceptualize things, and even come up with headlines and summaries and things like that. So if you haven't used ChatGPT, I mean, it's free to play around with some limits, but it's definitely something to check out. And OpenAI, who owns ChatGPT, has a special relationship with Microsoft, and there's currently in preview an Azure OpenAI services, which gives you access to these APIs. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll even show you Azure OpenAI Studio. And like even in the end, if Sitecore ends up bundling this stuff right into its products, and it already is, I'll cover some of that. There'll be some use cases where you may be able to leverage this. Just writing your own chat bots, places around personalization, there'll be plenty of opportunities. And I think it'll be a new service that will be commonly used. But first, I want to go a little bit into history. So, I mean, remember, this came out in November. And I actually was fortunate enough to go to London in March for Sitecore DX London. And there were a number of sessions on generative AI between Microsoft, between Sitecore. And Sitecore actually demoed in one of their keynotes this integration they built with some of their services for Content Hub. And it was pretty basic, right? It wasn't like really integrated into the experience. It was kind of a one-off page where you can kind of type a prompt, get the answer, and then copy paste it into CMP. They also had other prompts where you can generate images and things like that. So there's actually a YouTube video. I'll try to put some of these links in the chat after. I don't know if we have a way of getting copies of decks to everybody, but I'll give it to Martin and we'll see what we could do there. Similarly, there was another great demo at DX Europe about Sitecore Personalized, and they actually built out this decision model that would actually call into OpenAI in a couple different ways to generate content for blog posts and images for blog posts on the fly. I haven't seen a video of it. I actually blogged in my recap a little bit more about it, but it was pretty cool because like as you navigated the site, like if you were going to hiking in different areas, it kept on generating new places or new similar things on the fly. And in the demo, they went to the decision table and they kind of short circuited the table and make everything return Mars. And then all of a sudden you saw a blog post for hiking as a single on Mars with pictures of people walking across the Martian planet, which, I mean, it just kind of boggles my mind where this stuff is going. So this had me thinking a lot about it, and I actually built a lot of what I'm going to show you before Sitecore actually posted a new page within the last 2 weeks. And it's worth looking at this. There's a video that shows the integration that they've built into Content Hub 1. And you see a little screenshot. You can kind of do a prompt right in the rich text field. And then there are also other cases if you've already written things where it could rewrite it and things like that. I suspect heavily that this is probably what's going to end up looking like when it's fully integrated in XM Cloud. But I still think some of the thoughts and ideas I'm putting forth with this POC still have some value, and we'll see where that ends up. All right, so I wasn't looking to just add a prompt into XM Cloud or into Sitecore where you can go just type something and get a result and then copy paste it. I mean, if that's the case, I would just go to ChatGPT and do that. But I was thinking a lot, and a lot of people talk about governance when they talk about generative AI, and how do you, as an organization, kind of provide this capability without letting it go crazy, letting people do whatever they want. Like normally when you're content authoring, you want to make sure everything's from the same tone, from the same voice. Maybe like even from a language model perspective, like you have a certain organizational vocabulary, you have a certain organizational set of data that you may want to have access to, and that's something to consider. And you may want to train it. And a lot of this stuff gets into Azure OpenAI, and I'll show you how you can do some of those things. So I actually, let me show you what I built, and then I'll show you how I built it, and then we'll go from there. All right, so hopefully, let's just check that I'm not logged out, because who knows how long I've been here. Of course, I was logged out. All right, let me move this thing out of the way. All right. All right, actually, let me show you in Pages. So this demo site is actually a site, like if you ever get a chance to take the XM Cloud training, this is a demo site you would build. So Mara and I were actually in this a few weeks ago, and I think they released it on Sitecore Learning yet. If not, they'll release it soon. Definitely a good training.
They say they have. They say they have. So
yeah,
it's going
highly
live.
recommended. Highly recommended. So this was kind of part of it. And what I've done is when you have text fields, I've made it, and of course it's session expired. I should have reloaded both things. That's what happens when you prep everything before a 2-hour call that runs late. As this loads, the one thing I will note, so this is running locally. I have been able to deploy it to XM Cloud on the server, but I am running locally. And there is a setting you can do in your application settings where you can get Pages to work with your local Sitecore instance. I will admit I did disable linting in order to get this deployed, so it is a POC, and I don't really care. I wouldn't do that in real life. So anyway, when you go in the text box, you kind of get this set of buttons that you have complete control over, where you can configure, and I'll show you how that is, and really control how prompts are made. But let's just do the rewrite and kind of show you how that works. And I even added the nice little typing effect to make it feel like it really is ChatGPT in doing it. And these prompts are completely configurable. So let me show you a little bit of how it's configured on the Sitecore side. So I added this generative AI settings node. You know what? I have the keys in there. I'll probably disable this later because I know this is getting recorded. But you're able to kind of configure your keys, and I probably should move those to app settings anyway. But you have the ability to configure what prompts, what order they occur, and the prompts are really just children of this. And the prompts are actually pretty straightforward. You can define whether they append or they replace, and they gives you really two things: a scenario and a prompt. And you note in the prompt we have the ability to embed the content with these handlebars. So basically what happens when you click it, and I'll show you the API endpoint that does this, it runs the scenario, and you'll see when you're talking to the chatbot, you actually can tell it what type of thing you're doing, whether it's kind of like a user setting. I mean, it's a pretty flexible thing. And then you do a prompt. So we can do different ones to define different scenarios and things like that. But one of my favorite ones is I actually built this one to incorporate keywords, because I think a common use case of this is I want to update the content to target a few SEO keywords. So what if I had like maybe I want to use tags, which is part of my template, or I want to add a new field. So I added a keyword field. So just to show you on this homepage right here, right? I have a keyword saying to Basecamp. So when I click that, it should rewrite it with the word Basecamp in it, because what it'll do it'll kind of give the scenario and it'll say where it makes sense, incorporate the following keywords with the following content. So if I go here, I go back to this and I hit incorporate keywords, and hopefully demo gods work. Base camp at 7,600,000 feet. And I tell you, every time I do this, it has completely different text, which is really cool.
That's
All
very
right.
cool.
And wow, it's running a lot.
The GPT model, it's using 3.5 or 4.0?
I'll show you. We'll jump into Azure AI. Let's do the Azure AI
Okay.
Studio stuff right now. So one, you have to fill out, this isn't generally available, right? When you go and you look at it in the Azure Marketplace, it says you have to apply for access. I think it took like a day for me to get access. And I've actually open sourced this. I'll give you the GitHub to this. It has a link to the form. Fill it out, and then like a day or two later, you'll have access and you'll be able to deploy this, right? So when you deploy a model, you have to deploy, I mean, it's all GPT 3.5. I mean, these are the different base models. Those are the different models, but I did GPT 35 Turbo for this. I think the difference is how many, I always forget the word, symbols it supports in a query.
Yeah, parameters are more.
Yep.
Yeah.
But here's the really cool stuff, like data files. So say you have your own well, this is yeah, so data files are different things. All right. So yeah, this allows you to, I had the ability to add one before. What happened to that? I don't know why this button's disabled.
Probably need to go on back. That's what you'll not have refreshed.
It worked before, so maybe I have to undeploy it and then redeploy it. I probably have a screenshot somewhere I could show you, but you have the ability to add data, example prompts, and results, and it'll learn from that. The other cool thing it has is content filters. So we can actually create and say what level of tolerance we have around things like hate, self-harm, and violence and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is probably also very early on and definitely going to get better over time. So I'll show you a little bit of what went into this, right? So when you use the XM Cloud Starter, you get this Visual Studio solution for platform. And the first thing I needed to do was disable the packages.props because it screws with my NuGet, and I have trouble thinking. I just like to add NuGet references. So I did have to add a few different references for this new OpenAI service, which when you look, you have to look for stuff in preview because there is no published version of it. Actually, I can probably show you. Let's see what's installed. Of course, I don't want to have that highlighted. I did have a little bit of version hell trying to get the right versions of everything because there are dependencies and stuff like that. But this is Azure AI.OpenAI, and it is in beta. There is no live one. And I actually had to use a lower version just because of some dependency issues with some other assemblies, but everything seemed to work. I ended up deploying my own API on XM Cloud, which, as was mentioned earlier, isn't generally a best practice, but I wanted access to the tree and stuff like that. So most of this stuff is just in this generative AI controller. It is just a Sitecore Services API controller. A post, I created my own prompt request object. We're getting just all the config settings, right? And then we open a client. We add a new chat message of system type with that prompt scenario. And then we set another chat message from a user type of the message scenario type with the message that we generate. And you can see here's where we're placing the content and the keywords. So if we wanted to add other fields and other capabilities, we could do that right there. But just for different types, right? Let's see, come on. Like there's system, which I showed you. There's an assistant type. I mean, there's a whole bunch of documentation I go through, but it's pretty powerful. But in the end, we're getting a response, we're getting the chat completions, and we're getting the first result and returning it as a string. So this part is pretty straightforward. I mean, I just had some infrastructure code that I have just when I do services APIs that work with no issue. And then the component itself is actually just a React component. And I am not great with React yet, but I think I got everything to work with no squiggly lines. Well, almost no squiggly lines. Damn it. That's probably why I disabled linting. But yeah, I mean, it's just one big component, and it attaches itself to text fields on entry and kind of puts itself and positions itself in the right place. And I stole the colors from Sitecore just to make it look like it fit in. And that is really it. So, I mean, I'm assuming in some way, shape, or form, it's going to get integrated in XM Cloud soon. I'm already seeing stuff from like, if you ever look at any of the Adobe I think it's Firefly or Firelight stuff, you could see where they're going with it. I saw some screenshot that looks similar on how they're thinking of doing it in AEM, but none of this stuff is live yet. And I'm sure over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see everybody kind of play in this space. I think governance is going to continue to matter. So really, it's not about free for all and letting anybody do whatever they want. It's about how do we enable this and still maintain some control over it, right? And then I also think that Azure OpenAI Services has some broader applications. I think using it for personalization, suggestions, for chatbots and things like that, we're going to see lots and lots of more there. So thank you. I have a detailed blog post about this. And then just today, I open sourced it. I made my GitHub project public for it, so everybody can look at it. I figured short lifespan until Sitecore puts something out. And if anybody wants to look at it and play with it, feel free. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Any questions?
No, thank you. It's very awesome.
That's remarkable. That's really cool, David. It's such an exciting time. There's so many things we can do with this. It's remarkable. It's really neat integration too. The typing effect is awesome.
The amount of opportunities we got, it brings me really FOMO, fear of missing out. So much things I want to learn and study, but what comes to general availability?
Too much to do right now. Like there's too many areas that you can get involved in.
Absolutely.
This wasn't even my favorite project over the last couple of weeks. Maybe in the future I'll show you my Sitecore personalized decision modeling tool.
Ah, interesting.
Oh, that one is awesome. I was overexcited when I saw that first time. Let's keep it secret for a while, but stay tuned.
Is that with OpenAI?
No,
it's not OpenAI.
Basically, I built a way to do a visual design or structured design to output the JavaScript for programmable.
Wow.
Decision models.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to model like a customer journey or personas with offers, with requirements, propensity models and stuff like that, and have it just output a bunch of JavaScript, it'll do that.
Very cool. Wow. I can't wait to see it. Wow. When do you think it'll be out?
You can, if you check out my LinkedIn, you'll find videos of it. I posted a blog post on it already.
Oh, filming there right now. Awesome. Well, this is remarkable. Well, any questions for David, guys? All right. Well, David, thanks for your time. This is what a great one to end the user group on. It's so much to do. I'm definitely going to look at the repo. I'm already checking out your LinkedIn. Can't wait to see the thing in flight. That's awesome. Exciting times. So one other thing to build up on the SuckCon, Sitecore DX, same week, same place. Well, Minneapolis. So if you're you know if you're looking to go to SuckCon, hook into the DX and vice versa. So I'm sure a lot of us are going to be there for one or the other or both, right? So looking forward to seeing you guys. We'll probably, let's see, August. We'll see if we can get another user group in before that for those whose papers didn't get accepted. Otherwise, we'll probably see each other at one of those events.
You haven't mentioned MVP Summit, which comes the same week.
Yes, that's another one. The
Does not apply to all of the attendees, but some of us can go there as well. And from what I know, this summit will be very different to the previous summit because they were keen to cancel it last year due to lack of new staff, and maybe some speakers were hesitative, but this time it will be proper one.
Yeah, excited. Well,
I predict 10.4 getting released by this day.
10.4.
Why not 11?
It's
Sitecore
coming
11?
under code name 10.4, so it's not 11.
Oh, it's not 11.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thanks everyone who stuck around. Thanks for staying late. Again, Andreas, thanks for sticking around all the way through. Appreciate your time. David, Kautilya, thanks for presenting. We'll regroup in the next few months. Otherwise, we'll see each other in Minneapolis.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.